It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. All right. We have yet another interesting week ahead, and every single week is jam-packed in 2025 and into 2026. I'd love to tell you that it was going to be different, but it's not. I had a few comments in some of the clips that came out of the podcast online where people were not enjoying the hard, cold reality of what we're facing. And that made me think that we need to have a talk about what spirituality actually is. There is a lot of bypassing online, and one of the phrases that is most ill used is love and light. Love and light makes it sound soft, sparkly. And there's this idea that if we look at reality as it is, we're not being spiritual, we're not being positive, we're not doing the work. And that is actually part of the mindset that leads into the alt-right pipeline. So I thought I'd have a word with that, give you a little history lesson, and actually talk about some esoteric principles. Because yes, I do mundane astrology, but that's actually not my specialty. I'm an esoteric astrologer. I'm an energy worker. And the thing about that is most people aren't really interested in it, because the minute they start walking down that path, it's uncomfortable. There's not a lot comfortable when it comes to having to deconstruct our social and cultural programming, deconstruct our idea of what is good and right and true, making us the vulnerable and the victim versus accepting our agency. That can be cold. Waking up is just the first step. I've said it over and over and over. You wake up every single day. What do you do with your awakeness? Because that's what matters. So that's some of what we're going to talk about today. Of course, I'll give you some insights on what's coming up so you can be emotionally and psychologically prepared. There's no intention on my part to overwhelm you or overload you. If you start feeling overwhelmed and overloaded, you are always able to fast forward the audio or the video that you're watching. Okay? Some people like advance notice. Other people would rather just not. That's up to you. My job is to give information. What you do with it is your job. So there's a lot up on deck. Everybody's feeling it. Yours truly included. I've got my own transits going on, and I wrote about that in the Patreon. I'll read you the note I wrote, everyone. And we'll get hopping. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the moon as well, because a lot of that bypassing and some of that includes how we look at feminine and masculine and spirituality instead of looking at energy as energy is part of what leads people down that alt-right pipeline. So welcome to the alt-left. I've been alt-left for a long time. I'll give you a little backstory on what led me to make videos on TikTok starting in 2020. Alrighty, get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your Red Bull, get your H2O, whatever your bevy of choice is, because we got a jam-packed episode. And whether we're driving to work together, taking the kids to school, we're going to get perfect parking. We're going to have our little safety bubble in traffic, so nobody's too close. Nobody's zipping out in front of us. And if they do, we've got enough space. Whether we're going to yoga or Pilates, taking our hot girl, hot guy walk, whether we're going to the park or we're going shopping and getting the groceries, we're going to do it together. All right. let's get moving. So I've had the great privilege of being involved in spiritual circles and communities since I was a child. Not just formal organized religion. There were people who were spiritualists and belonging to the spiritual church or spiritualist church. There were people in my life who read tea leaves and did divination. There were all kinds of people who showed up in my life, and my guidance started pointing me to books when I was a toddler. Yes, a toddler. But that's a story for a different day. I understood from a young age and brought my philosophy into my astrological work that being spiritual and physical is a tandem job. They're not separate. Okay. Even though we're all taught, if we've been well churched, that, the goal is to get to the afterlife, and you want to get to the preferred afterlife. You don't want to end up in the bad place. And life was full of a lot of darkness. So those beliefs that there could be love and acceptance and forgiveness, that there was light that could shine into the darkness, were things that gave me great hope as a child. Of course, I wasn't raised evangelical. And as I grew older and I grew out of that kind of theology, it was still the understanding that we are supposed to embody our spiritual nature. It's not about landing in the right place once we're done. It's about crafting that in this lifetime. In 1989, I had to take a science course as a requirement of my degree. And it ended up being a quantum mechanics theory class. Now, I had left the church. I was studying comparative religions as part of my understanding of how human beings make decisions, because we make decisions based off our belief systems, right? And since I was studying international relations, I wanted to know what was at the core of those decisions that the decision makers were making. What was their core beliefs? I tried to get out of that class because I thought it would be something like biology or zoology or botany or something like that, because it was called natural sciences. And Dr. Troller, she was an amazing woman, very, very learned, said she didn't let women out of her classes. I was like, you don't understand. I was in a class full of engineers. And I thought, well, there goes my shot on the bell curve. But she was willing to work with me. And I'm really glad I took that quantum mechanics theory class, even though I swear it broke my brain into a million pieces. And I did more than pass. I got an A. I was shocked. But she worked with me to understand how energy works. Spirit is energy that is not densified into matter. All the quarks, all the neutrinos, all the protons, electrons buzzing around. The more quantum mechanics theory starts to prove things out, now that scientists are starting to finally look at consciousness and realize it has nothing to do with the brain, that we actually do emit light until it is extinguished upon our demise. Oh my gosh, we actually have auras. Any clairvoyant could have told them so. It isn't about being good. It isn't about being bad. It's about frequency. Where are you resonating? The alt-right pipeline will talk about similar subject matters. They'll talk about quantum mechanics. They'll talk about resonance and vibes. And they talk about things that are rapture adjacent, like the new earth of separating into 5D, and it'll leave all the bad people behind, which is one of the least spiritual concepts I can think of. The astrology of the next 40 days or so, as Mars moves through Scorpio and will eventually make an easy connection called a trine with Saturn in Pisces. You're going to hear a lot of talk about 5D. You're going to talk a lot about altered states of consciousness. You're going to hear a lot of talk around more religious phenomenon or metaphysical phenomenon, people having visions, people in the know, more prophecies will be talked about, things like that. And it's that misuse of our understanding of how energy works that leads you down the alt-right, because it puts you in a space of moral superiority. It puts you in a light that makes you above those who believe contrary to what you do. The demonization, the dehumanization of people, which leads to all manner of uncomfortable and unpleasant circumstances in this life. And that's putting it lightly. A lot of harm is done with that kind of thinking. I watched some very fine astrologers and energy workers fall down the alt-right pipeline and almost sanctify and deify the person who is supposedly leading the United States. And this was happening back in before 2016 even. You know, they say QAnon got started in 2017, but I was watching this form back in 2012 when everybody was up in arms over the Mayan calendar. And reasonable people of good heart started sliding down. And it's easy to be frustrated as an energy worker, as a light worker, as somebody committed to service when you're faced with so many people who are intentionally ignorant. That is difficult. It is a difficult thing to hold your consciousness. And because of Calvinism, especially in the United States, because of this belief that God favors the blessed and the pure, and God punishes or disregards those who do not make the grade, which is contrary to any Christian message. People expect this purity. People expect this people expect perfection out of teachers. They want this shiny shoed, slick back haired, ethereal vision of a human. And overemphasize aesthetics and overemphasize tools like candles, crystals, herbs. You know, all of those things have uses. I'm not saying they don't, but there's an overemphasis outside of the development inside. Looking for the magic bullet, looking to avoid the pain we experience, looking to avoid reality. I know I did it too when I was young. Even though I believed we were here to spiritualize matter, of course we don't like to feel uncomfortable or sit in the pain. And I wanted love and light to be fluffy just as much as the next person. I was tired of hurting. I too sat in my pain story, the story of my trauma, and identified with it and wanted so many accommodations because the world doesn't seem to ever stop, does it? Stop the world. I want to get off. It's an easy thing to want, and it's natural, and it's part of the process. There are concepts, esoteric principles that get co-opted by people who seek power or seek to manipulate groups of people to do their bidding. And they will ping your pain. They will hold you codependent. They will string you along. They will demonize and vilify you if you attempt to move away, or you think differently, or you speak differently, or you look differently. Those are red flags. Other red flags are an over-attachment to aesthetics. I think of what Tolkien wrote for Strider when the hobbits didn't quite believe he was this king. Because as much as Viggo Mortensen was hot, Strider in the book was not. He was an ugly mug. And he said, "'Tis better to look foul and feel fair. 'Tis better to look foul and feel fair." This appearance of perfection, this denial of humanity, the idea that being human is a punishment or a grind, not that it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but this idea that we are less than and perpetual sin is a control mechanism. And it was a control mechanism not designed in the 19th century, not designed in the 15th century, but it goes back to the Bronze Age. And it takes a lot of work to deconstruct these ideas. This idea that we're not worthy and that love excuses all. Love is not absolution. Love is not remiss of accountability. Just like compassion and empathy do not mean you do not face consequence. Sometimes letting people fail and have an experience is the most compassionate thing you can do. Trying to save people from themselves robs them of experience. If you think you know better, and you might have more experience, you might have more time on the planet, you might have more knowledge, and you're like, no, don't do that. I did that. Don't do that. Guess what? You're robbing someone of the opportunity to have an experience, even if it does them harm. I'm not saying you can't offer aid or assistance, but trying to rescue someone from themselves to think you know better without investigating, having conversations, asking their point of view, asking them why they feel the way they do, asking them what they actually need instead of thinking you can solve their problem. That's not love. That's control. That's needing people to fit into your worldview of what is necessary. That's not love. Now, I'm not saying you should let people suffer and struggle all the time. There's a big difference. If somebody is drowning, what do? You throw them a life vest, right? But if somebody can doggy paddle and they can swim and they're not in major danger, it's okay to let them learn from experience. You can be a guide on the side. That's spiritual. That's love. Light can be piercing. Light can be blinding. Light can shine onto the hard, cold truths and reality of what we do to and for and at ourselves. And it's easy to sit and ruminate in the negative. It's easy to sit and ruminate on how we screwed up, to identify and blame ourselves for what we do in life. A lot of the shadow work people push online is dangerous. It's dangerous. I've talked about that more than once on my podcast. Shadow can only exist where there is a light. Shadow can only exist where there is light, or you are faced with an abyss. Light pierces the darkness. And the darkness can be frustration, irritation, pain. And we avoid these things at all costs instead of understanding. And in the alt-right pipeline, they'll actually massage people's anger, their pain, their frustration, their irritation, their trauma, and make them feel anointed by it. They brew hate disguised as truth. In 2020, I went on to TikTok to protest its first attempt at a ban. Oh, what a journey it has been. I had looked into it before, and it was mostly teenagers dancing, and I was like, well, I'm not a dancer. I don't really get it. And I was already off Facebook because, I'd pop into a few groups here and there, but I was so frustrated with the bad astrology and how people would argue thinking they knew. And there was some very dangerous concepts being thrown about because people put their faith in the astrology instead of understanding the astrology isn't making anything happen to you. Astrology is a framework of understanding, and it shows possibilities and probabilities. It's not magic. Can you do magic using your astrological understanding? Some people can, very few. That actually works. And the reason why most people lean into magic and doing spell work is because they feel out of control. Not that it's wrong, but trying to manipulate a situation instead of working with the energies that are around us to grow, to have self-understanding, to step into the next best version of ourselves. Hopefully that lasts a lifetime. Hopefully there's no there that we end up at until we're done. Love and light isn't a fluffball phrase. Love, if you have struggled, suffered, been harmed, actually being loved, not obsessed over, but loved. When it hits your heart, it can be overwhelming. It can be overfilling. And I'm not saying don't shoot for it. Don't shoot for feeling loved. Of course, go for feeling loved, but understand what love is because it's a loaded word. One of my teachers said the term I prefer is acceptance. Acceptance. Because love has so many negative connotations and examples. People will use codependency and say it's love. People will yell, "Don't you understand? I love you." While they're yelling, that's not love. That's attachment. And attachment and acceptance are two different things. We can be very attached. But love is acceptance. And to feel accepted by whatever deity you choose to believe in, by the universe, the cosmos, and most importantly, yourself. That's a little bit like being the Grinch and having your heart expand 10 times, not just 3 times, 10 times. And light, to feel the light move through your body, the hum and the buzz of the universe and all that is streaming through every cell. It's almost impossible to maintain that for any great length of time. It requires an incredible amount of focus. It can be done through active meditations when you're in the zone, when you're gardening, when you're taking a walk, when you can get out of your head, out of this part, the frontal lobe, when you can get out of the frontal lobe and just step back a minute and just connect with the moment. The light can shine through and in. And at that point, you feel connected. You just feel connected. And the pettiness of the world around you falls away. It falls away. And it's a wonderful experience to try to recreate over time. It doesn't have to be a one-off. Those peak experiences that so many people have, like if I could just get back to that mountaintop, if I could just feel the way I did on that one particular day, you can recreate it consciously. That's what's in the curriculum at the mystery school through that A&I process. Ways to help develop your discipline around recognizing your worthiness, your capabilities, the influence you have over your own life, your connection to yourself. Because our guidance is actually part of who we are. It's not separate. It may seem like a separate thing or being or concept, but we are a fragment of the whole of what is. And so everything is a reflection of us, even the parts we don't like. The pain and the anger and the irritation and the frustration and the apathy, and I talked about that last week in Patreon, that's resistance to what is. And resistance is what forces growth if we can move through it. Through acceptance, love. Radical acceptance is radical love. And it allows people to be who they are, where they are. And it allows us to still do things like have boundaries. Because that's loving ourselves. We're allowed to have boundaries. We're allowed to say, I prefer this. I do not prefer that. Right? That's not a lack of spirituality. This idea that we have to go to automatic forgiveness. Oh, it's okay. That's bypassing. If you have to subvert your well-being to make someone else comfortable, that's not spiritual. But neither if somebody's offering accountability up. If somebody's saying, hey, they're trying to beat you to it, right? Like, oh, I want to be accountable. I did blah, 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 blah. That's avoidance. That's actually not accountability. You don't have to drag things out. You don't have to be in a fight. You don't have to get into it with people. But you also don't have to say, well, that's okay. You say, I acknowledge that you see that. Thank you for acknowledging. And I still feel XYZ. It is not a lack of spirituality. It is not a lack of spirituality to be involved in politics. It is not a lack of spirituality to be involved in your community. Sitting isolated and shutting out the world is not spiritual. It may be part of a spiritual process. It may be part of your initiation at a certain level to withdraw from the world so you can re-enter. But trying to live above the fray, That's bypassing, because we are here to spiritualize matter. And part of being a material being on this planet is there are politics. Where two or more are gathered, there are politics. And I'm sure you've heard the phrase, bad things happen when good people do nothing. Bad things happen when good people do nothing. And there are many things we can do. Watching the news doesn't mean you're active or participating. Watching the news just means you're being manipulated by people who have a certain rhetoric. Being in the know. Did you know this happened? Did you know? But that doesn't do anything. You're just spreading news. But hearing something on the news and saying, what can I do about that? Can I do anything about that particular situation? No, but I'm really mad. Okay. It's okay to be really mad when I see things that I am not aligned with. How can I be of support? How can I be of service? What can I do to be a counterbalance? See, I complained about these alt-right people for a long time, right? So go back to 2020. I go on to TikTok. It's not just people dancing. There are people who are spreading fake spirituality. They got really cool clothes, they got hot makeup, and they got some hot takes. And it was BS. It was ill-formed, ill-considered, and I knew where it was going. And I thought, oof. And in my head echoed, bad things happen because good people do nothing. And I was like, well, I'm a well-practiced energy worker. I'm a light worker. I'm a world server. I'm a master astrologer. I'm going to give information for those who are willing to receive it. I have never cared about having a large audience. Oops. It happened. I didn't expect that. I would have been fine with a handful of people, and a handful of people I found. Now we have a community of thousands at the Awake Space Patreon. Both our vibing members and our supporting members. A community of thousands of people doing their damnedest every single day to take one more step, one more breath. That is the goal. Life, spiritualizing matter, taking it one step at a time. Pop astrologers would have you believe that the sun is your personality, the moon is just your feelings. These people have no feelings. These people have all the feelings. That's all bullshit. It's reductionist. It's bad astrology. They'll tell you that Venus is just romantic love. Hell, you can read some of the better astrology books and they still make Venus and Mars all out about sex. And sex is something that is there, but there's a lot more to it. Our feelings of self-worth, our feelings of value, our understanding of what drives our desire nature. It can go a hell of a lot deeper. And it does. I spent my entire career as an astrologer over the last 30 years to develop progressive interpretation, trying to remove as much patriarchy as I could, because that is something that it is a constant work in progress. And that's something I'm going to be doing in October. I wanted to write these books, but I don't have time. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm juggling a lot of balls. So one of the things I'm going to do with Astrology Crew is I'm going to do planets in aspect first, and we'll go just as many times as I can meet up. I'll do a Zoom webinar and we'll use the transcripts. I do better when I have an audience. It's a little harder to teach when I don't have other bodies energetically available. So that's something we're going to do. But yeah, the alt-right pipeline uses divisive spiritual tactics and rhetoric. Okay. Demonizing people. I can tell you there are people I don't want to hang out with, but I understand they are human. I understand I only see one aspect of them if they are a public figure. I don't have to like them. I don't have to like their energy, but I can understand they play a role. The people I resist the most, in fact, any of us resist the most, are mastery partners. They help us master our consciousness if we choose to accept that mission. If that person's actions, words, and deeds are distracting me from my work in the world, then I have work to do on me. You can't blame other people for your consciousness. You govern your consciousness, no one else. You have the agency. And that's what I'm here to teach is if you only knew how precious you were, if you only understood the depths of the love available to you, which can be really hard to accept, how loved you are. If you only knew what was available to you, if you could take a moment and just a moment and let go of needing to prove yourself, of needing to do something to feel worthy. If you only could for a moment, just a moment, recognize how everything will conspire to bring you peace and ease if you allow it in, regardless of circumstances. And it doesn't mean having a bad day makes you bad, suffering irritation or anger or pain. We are human. These are human experiences, and they can be the catalyst for great connection with our higher selves, our connection to the all that is, our God, our goddess, wherever, whatever you believe. It can be. Shying away from the pain, shying away from the anger, shying away from the irritation, shying away from reality is not spiritual. That's bypassing. La, 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 la. We don't want to do that. That is not useful. What is useful is to lean in, see it for what it is, and say, I see that. I accept that it is. Doesn't mean you're condoning it. I can see that for what it is. What can I do in my moment, in my present reality, to do something of service? Whether it's donating to something, offering your time, showing up. People have been saying they feel lonely. They found great community in the Awake space, but they feel lonely in their physical location. And I said, go to the library. Go to the library. There might be groups who meet at the local library. Go to the library. At least the people there can read. Is that snarky? Yeah. Is it okay to be snarky and spiritual? Yeah, it can be. Even if they can't read, they have an interest. They have an interest in knowledge. They have an interest in learning. They have an interest in understanding. They have an interest in the arts. They have an interest. We don't need to be in groupthink, but if we can meet with like-hearted people, shared interests, we got a shot. All right. That's my sermon. That's my sermon. All right. All right. Coming up next, we're going to do some patron shout outs because we got a whole bunch of new patrons. Thank you so much. Without patrons, we don't have a podcast. We are 100% listener supported. And I, for one, am very, very proud of that. I almost forgot to read to you the note I put up in Patreon called Knowledge is Not Power, Using It Is. It's available to all patrons, both vibing and supporting. That's free and paid. We'll do patron shoutouts after this. Knowledge is not power, using it is. I have written and said many times, astrologers are not immune to transits. What I mean by that is that regardless of how much time, study, and practice you have as an astrologer, you are still faced with life, the ups, the downs, the doorways through which you can choose or not to walk through, and the chasms you look at and wonder how you'll ever get across. Right now, I'm experiencing a couple of different transits that are rather raw. And they're not horribly long. It's not like a Pluto transit that can feel like it takes forever to get through. However, they are intense and useful. Knowledge is not power. I don't know who made that axiom up, but let me tell you from a life well lived that knowledge means nothing unless you apply it. Knowing and applying are two separate subjects, and that's where wisdom comes into play. When to take action, when to retreat, when to get to the bottom of things, and when to step back and process, when to go it alone, and when to reach out for support. These are all things we have to examine that combine knowledge with wisdom. Knowing and doing are two separate things. Recently, a few people have been asking me how I shoulder the burden of knowing what's to come. The short answer is, it is heavy sometimes, extraordinarily so. The long answer, I have cultivated a lifetime of skills to support myself, and one of those is knowing when to get professional support when things are simply too heavy. Another short answer, I see the what, not the how. I don't get all the details. I get the big picture, the themes when it comes to world events. How do I deal with it? Well, I might scream and pull out my hair if I get asked one more time, when is it getting better? My answer, when we make it better, when each of us does enough work that we're less self-absorbed, when each of us realizes that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, and that our individual consciousness does contribute to the collective, and that even the smallest of shifts can make a great contribution. We each need to relieve ourselves of things like learned helplessness, attachment to our pain story, and learn to address our resistance, seek self-awareness, and our contribution to the collective. We each need to work on our individual locus of control and understand what we can and must do for ourselves and when we must join together with others. As someone who has faced great obstacles in life from an early age, I can tell you that putting your focus on the discomfort, the ugly, cold, hard reality is going to make things more difficult because it's this focus that reminds us of what power we do not have. Instead, turning our attention to the things we can take care of, the parts of life we do control, using our creative energy in ways that help enliven or inspire us, is how we make it through the difficult times. October isn't going to be an easy month. The bright side and silver linings are for each one of us to find using our agency. If we can do that, we can help shift things ever so slightly into a better outcome. Right now, for me, it's intense. The energy is sharp and heavy. I know this too shall pass. I have resources and support. I created this life for myself on purpose, not because of good fortune or luck, but by using the knowledge I worked so hard to acquire over the majority of my lifetime. It's time to be quiet for a minute and sit with guidance. Out of that space will come the next steps. That's how it always has been and always will be. Sitting with guidance gets us through. I'll let you know what comes. So I wrote that the other night when the moon was in Scorpio because I have been going through it. And it's not because predicting has gotten too heavy. Yeah, remember, I was looking at 2020 and 2025 out of context, and it was terrifying back in 1997 through about 2004. I put it down for a little bit because I was like, this is driving me crazy. But we have our own transits, and that grist for the mill, that's growth, but it can be very uncomfortable. And it's really easy to sit in our victimhood. It's, that dirty, rotten so-and-so did me dirty. That person didn't give me what I want. I'm tired of being tired. We all get stinking thinking that goes, and it's easy to ruminate in that. But it doesn't do us any good. We might feel temporarily justified, but if you're starting to feel like the ick and no amount of clearing is working, then it's probably an idea to switch your attention, And sometimes getting physical support, not just so you can vent, but so you can work on action items, so you can give yourself some better resources and tools, because we are in massive systemic change, guys. That's not going away. And in order to meet that, we have to change from the inside out. So one of the things I did get myself professional support. It's like, you know what? I support a lot of people, through the Patreon, through the podcast, in my one-on-ones, in my teaching. And it's been a while since I let myself be supported as well by somebody with the professional skill set to do so. And so I did that because we're not close to being done yet. The exciting part is starting to build over the next year or so. I know. You don't want to hear that, and I'm not going to talk about it too much. Don't angst over it. But having those tools to work within helps. So there's that. I want to thank you. And let's enjoy some patron shout outs, because without patrons, there is no podcast. Big shout out to patrons. We've had some pretty good live streams. In the next segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the magazine for October. The magazine goes out to members at the $15 level and up. It comes out every single month. In that, I write the horoscopes and I write the weekly predictions for what's in the headlines. So if you're in the horoscopes or deep dive tier, you actually get my predictions first, because you get my predictions hot off the presses on the first of the month. And that's what I'm putting out. October 1st, you'll get your horoscopes and your predictions hot off the presses. Patrons also get special discounts. I want to remind you that all patrons at the $5 level and up save 40% on 1 hour readings with any of the astrologers at wokeastrology.com. That would be Damien, Shelby, and Susie. And you guys also at the $15 level and up save 50% on the event on October 11th with Matilda and I, as we do charts and channeling together, looking at 2026. So there is that. All right, let me get to the patron shout outs. These are our newest members. Okay. So you'll usually hear your name over a couple of weeks' time as the list changes. All right. We've got Lindsay, James, Alexandria, Tiramisu, Amber, Brittany, Jim, Elizabeth, Matilda, A Beautiful Heart, Mostly Gemini, Claire, Jay Barrera, Nancy, Lindsay, Michelle, Allie, Julia, Goodwitch, Jaleel, Effie, Brinley, Jennifer, Sassy Frassy 248, Autumn Mac, Jen, Vic, MD, Ava, Gina, Hilga, Alicia, Soul Music Heals, Jen, Jess, Sheridan, Kat, Deidre, Linda, Mary, Esma, Tete, Tatiana, Intuitively Beth, Elizabeth, Danny, Sarah, Emily, Val, Marzi, Stephanie, Sarah, Rob, Nikki, Mina, Tamara, Patience Stone, Bruxa? I'm not sure. Either way, let me know. Linnea, Essa, Jordan, Amanda, Riley, Ashley, Kai, Patricia, Iced Matcha Latte, Five Dream Flex, Katie, Shanisha, Amy, Marissa, Rumination Redacted. I love that username. Kylene, Mel, Joyce, Jason, Nicole, I'm Amber, Amanda, Flora, Baker Non Baker, Angela, Heidi, Serena, Danette, Heather, Cavaldi, Megan, Maria, Jody, Amber, Gloria, Paige, Sarah, Caramujo 94, Saf, Jewel Sphere, Stephanie, Megan, Bernice, Sierra, Neva, Zen, Kelsey, Shreen, Morgan, Anne, the Ghostarian, Jessica, Maggie, Jackie, Zorelia, Tea in the Graveyard, Elizabeth, Vale, Narkara, Chrissy, Billy, Vanessa, Jet, Alex, Cassandra, Victoria, Laura, Hope, Jordan, Leah, Ariel, Megan, May, Caroline, Eora, or Laura. Sorry, I read that wrong. Laura, Jen, Carmen, Alyssa, Morgan, Paradox Priestess, the Heathen Equestrian, Just Us Three, Danny, Amanda, Carmen, Heather, Nick, Susan, Megumi, Joanna, Colleen, Christina, Roxana, G, Allie, Glitch Paladin, Natalie, Sasha, Jackie Herrera, Kathy, Keisha, Aaron, Jorge, Emily, Cindy, Star Sister, Cameron, and Looney Tutor. Looney Tutor, I love that. All right. Thank you so much for being patrons. Without you, there is no podcast. Or any of the other stuff I do. I want to thank you so much for your support. October is a hell of a month. It starts off with a bang. There's a lot that's going to happen. We're going to see changes in world leadership. Don't get your hopes up. My What's in the Headline segment is going to be up on Monday in the Patreon for $5 level and up. We'll do some deep dives throughout the month because there's some tricky transits. The full moon in Aries happens, if you're on the west coast of the United States, it happens in the evening of October 6th. Everywhere else, it's October 7th. Of course, as I like to say, the universe is a joker. It's pretty incendiary. We could see conflict spill out into outright war in certain places. We will certainly see instability. But there will also be some killer music. There will be some outstanding energy to grow spiritually. There will be some incredible art. There will be people rising up into the best of who they are. I suggest you look for those people or be those people. It is not a month to luxuriate in our misery, especially if you have a modicum of privilege. I'm not talking about the people suffering bombardment. I'm not talking about the people suffering from famine. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are not. We can sit and luxuriate in our misery, or we can rise up into the best of who we can be in the moment and make contribution. October is a rough month. It just is. On the outer plane, there's going to be a lot of rhetoric, a lot of mean-spiritedness on full display by the legacy media, by people who consider themselves in power. And there's going to be a lot of subterfuge and sabotage in the works too. So just when it looks like somebody's going to win their dastardly deeds, they will have not the best luck in the world. Look for the inventive and the creative and have a sense of schadenfreude. Okay, so it works out, guys. It's going to look gnarly before we get there. It just is. It just is. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can limit your exposure to legacy media. You can limit your exposure online and look up things that breed creativity, because this is an immensely creative time as well. Arts, music, crafting, baking, so many good things. Preparing for weather. There's a lot of weather coming up in October. So be ready. A lot of wet and some cold snaps. We might even see some early snow, right? Again, I'm going to cover that in what's in the headlines. That goes out to patrons at the $5 level and up every single Monday. All right. So that's what we've got going with that. October is intense. You can get through it by tuning in to your creative urge. And sometimes that's kind of hard when you're stressed out and you're feeling anxious or depressed or worried. Sometimes it's hard because you can feel like trying to be creative can be like moving upstream. But, start small, like wash some dishes, eat some ice cream, play a game. Watch some videos with baby animals or crafting or baking. Find something to inspire you as we move into October, because October is a lot. I'm going to read to you from my 2025 year ahead, and then we'll move to the next segment. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the moon and its use, because I've got a class called Making Moves by the Moon coming up. It's a 6-hour workshop, 2 3-hour sessions for people wanting to learn how to use lunar transits to make moves in their business or their career, but mostly business. Okay. When to take your time off, when to dig down and get into the groove of things, when to create, when to market, when to take on clients. What are your best days? Where's your energy at? Learning how to recognize that, learning how to observe and record your personal experience so you can plan forward. This is very exciting. All right, let's find that 2025 year ahead. If you're a patron at the $15 level and up, you actually get the slides from my 2025 year ahead that I did in June of 2024. I always do it in June 1st, and then I do the follow-up at the end of the year and put the astrology a little more into context. This year, I'm doing a bonus round with Matilda, medium Matilda. We are doing charts and channeling, giving our forecasts together for 2025. Incredible. And I think I'll slide, if you're on Spotify, you'll be able to watch the video. I'm going to slide in just a 3-minute clip of our last event where there was over 200 predictions done in the first 20 minutes that came in one rapid fire after another. Okay. Just insane. So we have a predictions and proof, and I'll put that in here. You guys, if you're in the Patreon, you want to sign up with your code if you're at the $15 level and up. September 30th is the last day. Otherwise, it's full price. Okay. It's worth every penny because we're also funny. And I'm going to be giving some tips on how to manage through the energy, because I hate just giving bad news. I hate it. That's stressful to me. So I don't like to leave people ill-equipped. All right. So here's what I wrote back in June of 2024. October starts with a bang. This could be something to do with the international community and alliances forming. Countries under strain are Israel, Iran, Lebanon, and Jordan. Remember, I wrote this in June of 2024. There's a big storm in the upper Midwest, could be tornadoes, wind, or something really impacting the Great Lakes. Second week of October could see naval skirmishes, issues with marine transport, or an accident with a vessel. It could be a cruise ship is also, but something big, a big boat. Could see a very strange murder case or serial killer, which is interesting. I'd forgotten I'd written this, and I was doing my, every 2-day predictions that I do for what's in the headlines based on the lunar transits. And there's one day where I'm just like, serial killer, serial killer, serial killer. So that should be interesting. Always a bundle of joy, aren't I? Another major storm could roll in after the new moon on the 21st or 22nd. This could cause a lot of widespread flooding in coastal areas, flooding, storm surges, and big wind. I think Southern California and the Southwest may see some action on this. Remember back in 2022, I saw a news article talking about the potential for a mega flood in California. And I looked up the astrology of the last time one happened. There was a big flood in 1933, I believe. And then in the 1800s was a big mega flood. It went from the Central Valley all the way down into Southern California. And so I looked at the astrology and I was like, oh crap, look at that, 2025. So I have an old video of that somewhere. But anywho, that Southern California, keep your eye open for rain in late October. Let's see, around the 21st or 22nd of October, Russia could intensify shelling of Ukraine and or Poland, but it could also be under attack from the EU and potentially see Federation members splinter out. Again, wrote this in June of 2024. October 22nd could see a power plant taken out in Europe or see the use of irradiated weapons, not necessarily big nuclear bombs, but maybe some tactical weapons or an EMP attack in Europe. That is a potential. Northeast USA needs to prepare for a big storm. A nor'easter is possible. Snow and ice could be in there, or just heavy rain and storm surges. And then October 29th is another day in 2025 where there could be a mass vision. Like the spiritual psychosis is going to be strong. Okay. So there's that. Yeah, the church, like the Roman Catholic Church, is going to be like, yeah, that's not how that works. All right. So if you want to know what's up day to day and get your bingo card ready, check out what's in the headlines in the Patreon. I'll link that in the show notes. Understand that it is, it's just for the outer world. Your inner world can be great, even when you're going through crunchy transits. So you can watch what's in the headlines in the Patreon if you're at the $5 level and up. If you're not, you can purchase it. I'll put the link in the show notes. Late May, early June.
May, early
Absolutely.
June. That could be the time, not necessarily he steps down, but the smoke comes out that they've picked a new pope.
Right. May 19th. That will be a significant day.
I feel like that's a change, like a legislation, a law something, yeah.
EU, it would be to do with any kind of agreement, trade agreement, trading partner, alliance, coalition, a military agreement.
Keir Starmer, I think, has got some drama coming his way. I don't think he's going just yet. And I don't think that there is going to be a new election. You are going to have to wait. I think that there's going to either be an attack on Keir Starmer or within London. There could be news about Harry's ability to stay in the United States. Travel in that time feels really off, whether it's air accidents, whether it is trains, whether it's pretty much everything. But I also think that the UK are retaliating to something that's happening to them or happened to them. See, Charles is looking really healthy at the moment, but I think that when he falls, he falls. It's going to be he is never going to overcome this cancer. It's going to follow him. And I feel that when we get into like the middle of the year, he's not as present as he was. Also, heat. I know June's early for the UK, but it feels like there could be some fires.
There's something to do with labor, unions, trade unions. I don't know what it would be because I'm not familiar enough with the situation.
It feels like they're being held to ransom. I don't know whether they're holding the government to ransom or the government are holding them to ransom, but it feels like there's a lot of, they're trying to change something that's to do with the trade unions, and that causes a lot of physical behavior. You may even have a run of boats go down. Like there could be a problem with a cruise ship in July, August. By the end of March, I feel like there's going to be some form of natural disaster with water, but in the water, it could be an oil leak, a ship goes down, a tanker leaks.
I've got a lot of that in there.
It's not all it seems. It feels like safety or something wasn't followed. Can I just touch on Italy very quickly? Because I've already touched on Rome. Expect earthquakes in Italy and a lot of them. And we could see some historic ruins being damaged throughout Europe because of seismic activity.
I love it when we sync up. Around the 19th of April, firestorms or volcanic activity to be expected could be from an already active volcano, an underwater volcano. And you guys may have some really freaking weird, like hell has frozen over type weather. Like when you, like hell will freeze over if this happens in Australia.
Yeah, we could have snow in Melbourne. Because we get snow in Victoria, but we don't get it in the lower lying ground. But we could get it in suburbs of Melbourne.
Right.
I feel like it's a weather event in Mexico. It could be a hurricane that hits very destructive in certain areas.
At the end of March, we see very, very stormy weather, extreme tides, could see, except, by the way, that's global, including the United States. Anyway, I have April 1st as saying pranks go wrong, could see a shocking event, surprise attacks in Asia, potentially, Eastern Russia or Russian Federation, issues with rivers, riverbanks, river gorges, shipping lanes, early April tensions boil over with China and in the Straits of Taiwan. Could also be a typhoon.
See, this is what concerns me, is that time where April through to the 21st, 22nd of April, there's
that whole month is
that whole month feels very explosive.
The moon in astrology governs our day-to-day, and I talked a little bit about that last week, but I want to talk about making moves by the moon because it's going to be a really fun workshop. And if you've got a small business, if you're a coach, a consultant, a therapist, if you do service providing, or you have a small brick and mortar store, this is such a lifesaver. Knowing what your lunar transits are on a personal level, you don't have to understand a lot about astrology. I'm going to walk you through understanding what it means when the moon is in a sign or in moving through your natal chart, and how to look ahead so that you can plan how you use your energy. Because have you ever done it? You schedule out some time. You're like, I've got to do an email marketing blast. I need to get out a class. I need to get my product launch going. I need to pay my vendors. I need to get a hold and get my invoices covered, all of that fun stuff. And then your day goes to hell and nothing on your to-do list gets done. Some of that is not understanding the energy of the day to day. We're always looking out at the big stuff, but we're not paying attention to the little stuff. A little bit like that irritation I was talking about earlier in the podcast. We often ignore the little things and they add up into the big things. Lunar transits are one of the best ways to plan ahead. It can really help. And there's no one size fits all because everybody has their own astrology chart. I developed this method for myself back in the 90s. And if you listen to the Astrologers Roundtable this week coming up, Susie asked me, when did I understand how to make astrology applicable? When did I get the idea? And I answered a little bit on there, but after we got done recording, I went, you know what? I forgot to mention. It was when I went to my first conference in 2001 and I was hanging out with other astrologers and everybody was, speaking in astrologicalese. Oh, did you see that, Saturn is trine Neptune? Or did you see that, Pluto is making this aspect? And everybody would nod their head and speak astrologicalese. And I decided, because my teacher was like, your chart is 100% all about communication. You need to focus on interpretation and like drawing new interpretation, but building on the classical. So learn what is first and then work on improving the language. And so I went and I'd be like, well, what do you think is going to happen? Or what do you think that means for you? And people would be like, well, it's trine. And I'd be like, yeah. How does that trine play out for you? What do you think? Well, I can't know. I'm like, how can you not know? You know what Saturn means and you know what Pluto means. A trine is unrestricted energy. So how would that play out for you? And they wouldn't be able to speak about it in their native tongue. Okay. Notice I didn't say English because not everybody there English was their native language. So, and astrologicalese is really great if people get together and they don't have the same language. It gives us a way to speak the notation, right? Just like scientific language does. However, if you can't translate that into application, what good does it do you? Right. And back in the day, people were so afraid to be considered fortune tellers and soothsayers that they weren't willing to risk being wrong, talking about the potential that was on the horizon. And I always thought that was silly. I was like, if you can't learn this and use it, what's the point? Now I understand some people not wanting to teach certain things in a wide venue without selecting students, at workshops and things, because so many people don't listen and they only hear what they want to hear. And then they run and they spread misinformation. And we were already seeing that happen online a lot. I get that. But it was just in the day-to-day conversation with other astrologers that made me realize people weren't doing this. They weren't learning how to communicate it. I've spent my life doing that. So 30 years of it. So in making moves by the moon, one of the things I'm going to help you do is understand how to know your natural energetical flow, which you can really forecast fairly accurately through themes. It's not like, oh, a tall, dark stranger is going to walk into my building and whisk me off my feet. You're probably not going to see that in a chart. But you might say, oh, I might meet interesting people, or that would be a good day to connect in my relationships. This is a day I probably want to go home early for dinner, those types of things. You can see that. Okay. So that's stuff we're going to talk about in Making Moves by the Moon. It saves you time. It saves you money. It saves you energy. Because again, the moon rules our day to day. And that's the thing nobody wants to pay attention to, because they think all these big events, they're going to be like, oh, it's the trade show that's going to make or break my business. No, it was your day-to-day activity that's going to make or break your business. Your ability to make decisions, your ability to do your timing, your systems in place. Like, being at a trade show is going to make or break your business financially if you have a good system in place. Period. I have another passion. It's business. Because if the only people making money are the bad guys, we're screwed, right? And money isn't going away. I can tell you that from the astrology. The financial system, even people are like, crypto. Like, crypto's still a currency. It doesn't change a whole lot. And if you think it's going to change the power that holds the finances, think again, because the institutions are well invested. Well invested. The minute the whales got in, your premise was refuted. Period. Okay. So you can, whether it's shiny baubles or gold coins or paper dollars or electronic funds, it's all the same shit. It's a transaction for an activity or product or a service. It's still a currency. Any other argument is just fart gas. Sorry. I'm just like, no. So we're not going to go to a barter economy. And barter isn't always the most fair. Because if you don't know your value, you don't know your worth, you don't know any of that, you're going to undersell yourself anyway. But we don't have to grind either. We can create systems for ourselves that work with our natural energy levels. And so that's what I've got. There's an add-on you can sign up for. If you don't feel confident in your abilities, you can sign up with me and I will work out a 3-month plan for you that gets you rolling and we'll meet together. It's not a reading per se, but it's working out a plan. And that's a fun way to do astrology. I like working out plans with people. Let's see. What else? What else is up? What else? We're going to talk about Astrology of the Child starting October 1st, this Wednesday. I have a 3-part lecture series. If you're a patron, make sure you use your discount before September 30th for either one of these. Understanding, that you can use astrology for pretty much anything, any framework. But you look at like a child's chart a little differently than you do an adult's chart, because a child's reality is different and their job is different and their function in the world is different. And so we look at the houses a little differently. We look at the placements a little differently. We talk about the development, child development, personality development, cognitive development, how to support children using astrology. So all of that is up on deck this month, starting October 1st for the Astrology of the Child. That's a lecture series I'm looking very forward to giving. It's a 3-part lecture series that really kind of goes in depth into astrology and supporting children by using it, and kind of what not to do as well. I have done a lot of parent-child readings in my day, and the biggest mistake parents make is they come in and it's like, they've got this special kid, and they can put a lot of weight, like, oh, they remember their past lives, they're super magical, and I'm like, stop making it a big deal. Don't put that on them. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight. If you've ever been a gifted person, a gifted child, a sensitive, energetically attuned child, and you grew up with that, you're special. It's an incredible head trip to put on a kid. And so we'll talk a little bit about, they're in tune because they're kids. Kids are in tune. Of course they are. They're less separated through experience on the planet. And so they are more in tune. So listen to them, but don't give them a head trip. I'm all about supporting children to become well-rounded, well-adjusted, and understand that they have their own path too, and respecting that. All right. Well, that's pretty much what we've got for this week. If you want to know what's in the headlines, head over to the Patreon. You check out the show notes. I'm excited about this week, and I hope you are too.